Welcome to the Friday Power Lunch, a weekly show amplifying the voices of the Virginia grassroots. Each week, we provide engaging conversations about politics, culture, and women making change. Produced by the unstoppable women of Network Nova, our motto is, when we vote, we win. The Friday Power Lunch is recorded before a live Zoom audience. Follow us on social media. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and show us some love and become a sponsor through Patreon. The Friday Power Lunch. Badass women getting things done.
From Network Nova Live, it's April 26, 2024. Can't believe it's the end of April, people, but it is. And you are on the Friday Power Lunch. I'm Catherine White, your host, bringing you the guests, the issues, the action, all in one room, in a Zoom. How much fun is that? And across Virginia and now coast to coast. We love to amplify the voice of the grassroots to get things done. We're building our muscles, and we like to make politics fun. So we're so glad you're here. Our theme today is all about really saving democracy, about how we will win in November. And that's going to mean registering voters and contacting voters. So how much fun is that? We have our guest today, our lineup. From Swing Blue Alliance, we have Susan Labandibar, the co-lead, and Andy Liebman, co-coordinator, all the way from Spain. Well, I'm so glad you're here, Andy. You made it in. And they'll be talking about their unregistered voters data project. Then Laura Brill, many of you know Laura Brill because of the great work she's been doing with high school students. And she's the CEO and founder of the Civic Center. And a little tidbit about Laura that we'll talk about later. She's also the former law clerk to Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So we have some really great conversations for you today. And Debra Taylor, Red to Blue. I talk about volunteers and the power of the work that needs to be done. You need an organization that could bring it, that really can help amplify all the work that needs to be done. Debra Taylor will be talking about how they act as a back office organization for registering new voters. We're so glad Deb's in the room. And lastly, but never last, Andrea Miller, founding board member of the Center for Common Ground, executive director of People Demanding Action, founding president of the National Women's Political Caucus of Virginia, and she's an IT and political director and a digital badass. So we're so glad that she's here today, and she'll be talking about registering Black and brown voters and her new tool, ActiVote. Super excited to hear from that. So some rules of the road, everybody. Get comfortable. I hope you have your tap dancing shoes untied a little bit, but got your coffee by your side. But our show business is we love to use the chat. Tell us where you're from. Tell us what you're doing. But if you get nasty, we'll kick your butt out. That's what we do. We're okay. And then the after chat, after 1 o'clock, we turn the lights down, we unmute, and we get to really interact. We build this community. This is so important today when we're talking about not just one-off touches to voters. It's the same in this room. We are building just a strong community, and this is how we really are going to make impact. So the after chat is a great way just to kind of really further talk to each other and meet. And then lastly, but not, important, support our show, become a patron. We have a Patreon membership for just a low amount from $5, $10, or $25 a month. You can support this group doing the work, and we really appreciate it. We love the patrons. You'll see them in the room. They have the special show banner. So thank you to those in the room that support us. And how much fun is this? We are now on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So you can join us there. If you want to listen to us while you walk, you can do it. And like we say, no one is going to save us, folks. It is up to us. And with that, I'm so excited to welcome the co-host for this national show, Susan Wagner, Markers of Democracy. How are you doing? And look at us both with white. We're channeling maybe some Ruth Bader Ginsburg today, or ERA or something.
ERA. Yeah. So thank you for asking me to co-host. And
Sure.
I think the first thing we should talk about is that amazing summit you have coming up.
That's a really great idea. So for those in the room that may not know this, Network Nova produces a women's summit. This is annual. In fact, maybe that's why I have white on. We started this with the suffragettes in mind when they did that, back in 1848. Well, we have this annual event. It's a really great way that we build relationships and we engage with tools and tactics, all kind of fun stuff. So June 28th, 29th in Tysons in Virginia, we'll have our annual Women's Summit. And the great news about this, our partner, Markets for Democracy, the Grassroots Collaboration Project, and World Ground Game, and Andrea's group, also the Center for Common Ground. We have amazing partners. You could see here how much fun we have. Tickets are on sale now. And I would say to you, that we have a wonderful program. Rachel Bitterkoffer is going to be coming in person. Hidden Where It Hurts. Simon Rosenberg is going to be there from Hopium Chronicles. We have Tom Bonnier, CEO of Target Smart, that's going to be there. That's just some of the list of people. Susan Wagner is coming, and tickets are on sale. And they're like $149 right now, early bird. And our hotel, the hotel is awesome. It is the Watermark Hotel in Tysons, and the Capital One Hall is adjacent, and that's the venue. And of course, we have fabulous swag, our t-shirts with our Lady Liberties on it. And make sure you get a t-shirt today too, because first of all, they're cool. And the Up to Us motto, wear them where you canvas, wear them when you're out and you want to talk to voters. The t-shirts are awesome. So get your ticket, because early bird ends May 1st and our hotel block is open. And if we sell this hotel block, we get to start another hotel block. And it is really a great value. It's a beautiful hotel, a beautiful venue, and it's going to be a great lineup. Also, I want to mention, if you're in the room and you'd like to sponsor us, we would love it. If you're an organization that likes to sponsor Grassroots, look over our package and talk to me. We really need this support. It is really what we want to do by bringing postcards from across the country, doing this kind of programming, making sure we win in November. Support us, become a sponsor. And you could do that today. We'll put the action link in there if you just want to support our work. We will love it. So that's it in a nutshell.
I'm very excited about it because a few people from Markers went to the one last year and they came back raving about it. And I think that the expression, it's up to us, is something that every grassroots person, whether you're an organization or an individual, I think we've kind of realized that it really is up to us. So I think when you do it in community and you get some spirit from being in a room filled with people who are like-minded, you just can sort of have the home stretch be so much easier to handle. And look, you make a lot of friends along the way.
We talk about this today, and I think when we're actually talk about relationships, it's also with voters. I think that the extra touches that groups in this room understand that needs to happen. You could try to register voters and then walk away. And if you never touch them again, it may not be a meaningful relationship, right? And it's the same in this room. Now we know each other. We've built more friendships out, and it's just great how we network and connect, and you can connect me to somebody. So definitely join us at the summit, June 28th and 29th. And we'll put the links in there and check it out. And we're going to have a great lineup. And I want to make sure
we may have some very good surprise guests.
I know we're working on all those surprises, right? I'm excited about that. And this, I'm thinking, because we like to bring it, I think it's going to be fantastic, that energy. And I really love to tell people we will have some congressional people there because they're obviously running for office. This is a big year. Maybe we'll have, like you said, some big surprises. But the big surprise will be us meeting each other in person and being able to see each other physically. And this year, when we talk about voter registration, is about building that muscle again, right? It is saying, okay, we did this all during COVID. We got real comfortable in our seat. Now it's time to really make those touches. But before we let things go today, I want to talk about what's in the news. It's April, and it's Sexual Assault Awareness Month. And I want to make sure we call attention to that. We went to some events this week on breaking the silence around sexual assault and abuse, harassment. And also at the same time, in this Sexual Assault Month, the Harvey Weinstein shit drops.
Right.
Talk about that, New Yorker.
Yes. Especially since it was the New York Court of Appeals that overturned the conviction that was in the lower court. For people who don't know, in New York, of course, we have it screwed up. Our lowest court is Supreme Court, and our highest court is Court of Appeals, just for nomenclature's sake. And 4 out of the 7 justices said that they could not use witnesses who were there solely to testify to a pattern. And the trial judge thought that that would be substantial evidence. So there was definitely a confusion about this issue. They are allowing them to bring the case again. And today, Alvin Bragg said he was going to bring the case again against Harvey Weinstein. Oftentimes, district attorneys say that. They don't always follow through. So the jury's out on that, to use an expression. He is convicted in California. He's supposed to serve 16 years there. But the same group that appealed this are appealing the decision in California, and they may come out with the same legal conclusion on at their Supreme Court.
Right, and it's wondered who are these? It feels like the courts are, in some degree, are failing justice. It feels like when we listen to Dahlia Lithwick, who is the senior advisor on Slate around the courts, and you see what our Supreme Court is doing. I mean, that case, what we saw, if anybody wanted to just need to take a nausea pill, if you listen to them talk about the Supreme Court, about EMTALA, which was all about, what emergency medicine physicians and doctors use EMTALA to save the life of people, and especially women and in pregnancy. This is where the Biden administration has sued Idaho to make sure that the state law that allows abortion, even in the face of women dying, that EMTALA, the federal law, would supersede that. And just to listen to them talk about this, and especially again after what we have said, it's the courts are not our friend right now when we talk about women and
right.
women.
And you know what? That's such an interesting point, because I think there was some notion that the courts were our bulwark against all this anti-democracy, and kind of you wanted to hold on to that. But now we're seeing a carve out for women. And this is pretty deep, but I was sharing this the other day with somebody, so I'll share it here. In the Bible, they have all these liminal figures, Old Testament, New Testament, the liminal figures. And it's as if women are being seen as liminal, scary figures. And we have to go back to where men are a little bit more comfortable with us. And so the onslaught is not just Trump and MAGA, but it's even our court system. And that's why what we're talking about today is so important, because the only way we are going to turn the hand back and stop this is by getting people registered to vote, getting the right people onto the court systems, and trying to turn those hands back. But if we don't, we are really you really see the slide here. You really see
we're entering the dark ages, for sure. It feels like that. And that, we all know that this is a 30-year concerted effort we saw, McConnell put in all these judges. And this is where, as voters, we're in the same place, I feel like, where we were before, when our voters, our coalition, are being distracted and not having their eye on the ball of what losing means.
Right.
And when they did that with Hillary, they got all about the pantsuit so much and their own, whatever. And then they didn't say, hey, the Supreme Court is on the line. And then what we see now is the outcome of that. So what we will see if we really, that's why it's so important to actually have these conversations now, even with your friends and family, about what's on the line, because we need to almost re-talk about this election. There's no election like it ever. There's no precedent to say, well, this will happen or this will we don't, it really is the unknown. So it will be up to us and that power of our relationships and our circles, talking to friends. So I'm excited today that we're tackling, I think one of the first things we need to talk about is about making sure people understand about where to vote, how to vote. We touch them several times to make sure that they're actually registered and they understand when to vote. So I would say, let's get at the run a show. Let's go to our guests and get this started. What do you think?
It's a great idea.
It's the best idea I had all day. All right. And what we can concentrate again, folks, is what we can do now. And what we can do now is concentrate on winning this election. So very excited. All right. I see. Sorry, I lost my screen for 1 minute. Susan and Andy are here from Swing Blue Alliance. And so what are your, just listening to us talk right now, and you guys looking for solutions, Swing Blue Alliance, you're focusing on something that's so important. I'd like to just first talk about why you started this project and, what maybe you saw that was needed to be done first or not do the same old thing. So let's talk about what your project's all about. Who wants to start?
Well, Andy and I have divided out our two
Good. Go ahead.
parts. So I'm going to talk about why this matters, and he's going to get into some of the details. And I'd just like to thank Andy because he has put a huge amount of work into this into this project. So my story actually starts, well, first, Swing Blue Alliance is the largest grassroots group of its kind in New England, and we're the only all-volunteer group that I know of that has a research department. And we do a lot of different things to facilitate the dissemination of knowledge about which field tactics are effective and which aren't. So it wasn't surprising that around Thanksgiving vacation last year, we started doing a very deep dive into all of the materials that we could read about how we could be effective in 2024, given the fact that $10 billion is likely to be spent on this election.
Wow.
Very little of it will be spent on voter registration, but voter registration in a presidential election year is actually the most effective thing that you can do, and it has long-term benefits as well. People who, once they register, stay registered, except in the voter suppression states, but we'll pass on that. The last few election cycles have been really good for Democrats when it comes to high turnout, but not necessarily high voter registration. We have not, we've been winning these elections because of high voter registration. And unfortunately, since 2020, in many of the swing states, we have lost substantial numbers of registered Democrats, and that has not been made up by people who simply don't choose a party. We're actually losing voter registrations. So, for example, in Pennsylvania, Democrats have lost 200,000 voter registrations since 2020, and Republicans have gained 200,000. In Maricopa County, where we're working, the Republican voter registrations have outpaced Democratic voter registrations by a factor of 3 to 1 in the last 12 months. So what we need to do is get out there and register voters. So let's go back to the beginning of the year. We had all kinds of great ideas, but you have to realize that most of us are based in Massachusetts. So needless to say, the first idea was not, let's run over to Arizona and knock doors. But we thought we would buy lists of unregistered voters. And then there was a question about what to do with them. And unfortunately, the research shows that writing letters and postcards to unregistered voters, if the letters are handwritten, there has not been any evidence that this works, except as a chaser postcard for official looking mailings. So it is true that there are a lot of effective voter registration mailings, but these are done by entities, nonprofit entities usually, that have pre-filled forms, that have professional looking letters, that engender confidence in the voter. And so we said, okay, well, let's try something different. Let's try deputizing parents, Democratic leaning parents, to encourage their young unregistered teens or young adults to register. And so we went out to the list brokers. We said, hey, we'd like some lists of young people who are unregistered who live with their parents. Now, how complicated could that be, right? I mean, huge numbers of young people, especially with housing affordability being where it is, live with their parents, and many of them are unregistered. So they said, sure, we'll get you that list. There's 3,700 households in Pennsylvania. We're like, what? there are hundreds and hundreds of thousands of young people who are not registered in Pennsylvania, and they could only come up with 3,700. So we said, okay, that's back to the drawing board. So we decided that we would do a couple of things. So one thing is we would learn how to clean lists, which we did. And Andy's going to talk about that. And the other thing is that we realized we needed to really get out on the ground and work on registering voters in person. And we are still focused on knocking doors for voter registration, because that is where the people that we really want to target can be targeted at their homes. And so we are working on a number of protocols for how to do that. And we are working in collaboration with all kinds of entities on the ground, including Democratic county parties. So with that said, I'm going to hand this over to Andy, and he's going to talk a little bit more about the progress we've made in just a few short months.
I love it. And I want to say to people listening out there in our podcast land that we're here with Susan Labandibar and Andy Liebman from Swing Blue Alliance, talking about the Unregistered Voters Data Project. So Andy, all the way from Spain, so excited about what you guys are doing. Tell me your part of this.
Okay, and I'm just recently arrived. I only got here yesterday. I was in Boston just before that. So as Susan said, we want to support people who are going to go to do in-person voter registration, whether it's people who are traveling from out of state or people who are already there. But with the huge deficit that Democrats face right now in voter registration, and some people call it the registration gap, we really want to help people to be as efficient as possible with their time. I mean, there are only so many doors you can knock on. There are only so many days you can go out of state. And we want to make sure people really make the best use of their time and have the biggest impact. So the way to do that is really with data. And we kind of have a three-pronged strategy. The first is to identify what we call hotspot precincts. So we're looking at voter registration data, census population data, and registration and voting records, right? So we're able to identify the precincts that are most inclined to vote Democrat, that have the highest numbers of unregistered voters. And these become a great target for doing our work. And if you're going to do nothing other than go set up at a flea market or at a farmer's market, these are good areas to do that work. But really, it's a lot more than that. We're also trying to figure out the specific houses where people can go do their canvassing to register voters. And we have two strategies there. One is to look at the voter registration, the voter lists right now. If you put all the addresses where somebody's registered on a map, you see all the addresses where nobody's registered. Mm-hmm. So we call those are unregistered households, and those may or may not be a good place to knock on the door. We're trying to find that out. It may be a good place depending on the socioeconomic or demographics of the neighborhood. And then the other thing, as Susan referred to, we're cleaning lists. It's a little shocking, but you can get lists from many places that say, oh, here's a list of 5,000 unregistered adults. And when you go to start cleaning that list, you find out, oh my gosh, 50-60% of them have moved. 5% of them are now no longer alive. 12%, 15% have already registered. And so if we're going to be trying to help people be efficient with their time, we want to make sure we have a list where if you knock on somebody's door, you can be sure that there's an unregistered person there. And, there's a big difference between walking around a neighborhood and having 50% of the people who answer the door saying, no, I'm sorry, that person's moved. Right. They don't live here anymore. And having, 98% of the people answer the door saying, yes, that person lives here. That person's not here right now, but come back later. So that's really a big part of that strategy, to know exactly where to go what are the hotspot precincts, what are the houses where we should knock, where we're going to have the greatest success. And by the way, all of this data that we're putting together, and we're putting it together for all of the swing states, really, our goal is to make it available for free to any group that wants to use it. You know, you come to us and say, we want to go out and do voter registration in person. We want to help you do the best job you can. And we don't want to have to charge you for that information. Right. It's hard enough already.
It's going to be, Andy, you're going to be really, your goal is to do that real data cleanup to get it ready. So volunteers, the next phase is those volunteers on the ground that could be doing that also with follow-up. And then where are you putting all the data? Like, so now you have a database of your own, I'm guessing, and I don't know if you want to show any other a slide of what this looks like in real time.
Yeah, so we're putting all this data together in spreadsheets. You know, this is where where it ends up, just mountains of spreadsheets. But ultimately, if people are going to go out in the field to go door to door, they need a way to be efficient, and we've developed our own app, again, that we can make available to everybody. It's a canvassing app. You know, many of us are accustomed to using, maybe we've used Minivan, maybe we've used something else, but the nice thing about this app that we've developed is that we can customize it completely. We can make it work perfectly for wherever you're doing canvassing, and we have control over the data. We, meaning, you know, Swing Blue Alliance and any partners we work with. We're not putting valuable data up in the cloud someplace and we can't get the information back, because at the end of the day, we want to analyze this. We want to figure out, where did we find the most people answered the door? You know, we're going to be adding, you know, socioeconomic and demographic data to this, in addition to names and addresses. And it's all in the name of efficiency. If we can point people to the very place where they're going to get the best response, that's what we should do. So we have this app that anybody can use. We're just putting the final touches on it, but really it's meant to make.
Let's show what the screen looks like. Up on the screen right now, we're showing that canvas map. Do you have a name for the app?
Just the Swing Blue Alliance canvassing app.
That's really straightforward. That's good. So yeah, what we're seeing on the screen, tell people what we're seeing.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a simple app that I think anybody can really understand. You can cut your own turf, if you know what that means. You know, there's a filter bar, and you can choose which zip codes to go to, or pretty soon we're going to have other ways that, like maybe somebody who's organizing the canvassing can say, okay, you Susan, pick these 3 census block groups, and they'll have a name, and you can just go check those off. And the map that you see will be limited to that area. But it's really self-service. You're not depending on some, you know, guru to go work it all out ahead of time.
No, I love it. Yeah, I love it. It looks good. You could take that down, Robin. We were looking at the canvassing app map, and what I see is that you can really identify all the houses. And then I'm assuming once you hit those houses, you put the information in, and then that goes back to, like, they've been registered, they've not been registered. And then you're going to see them show up in the voter file.
Yes, then you're going to see them show up in the voter file, and we're going to keep sharing all this information with the partners who we work with, so you can learn something from it.
I love it, because then you really can show the impact. So we want to make sure we went over time a little bit here, because it is a lot to discuss, and it's so wonderful. Susan, any last comment? And then we're going to move to Laura Brill.
Yeah,
and I think you can stay with us. I think you can stay with us after 1, maybe, if people have more questions.
Yeah,
but go ahead,
I'd just like to thank Deepak Puri, who was very helpful to us, and Andrea's friend there. Oh, she's not here to hear me thank Deepak, but you know, it takes a village, and we all help each other, and thank you.
Well, that's what we do, really rely on this stuff. And this is why, again, when we build this collaboration movement, this is awesome. So thank you both to Andy Liebman, Susan Labandibar, Swing Blue Alliance. And let's get to our next guest, Laura Brill from the Civic Center. And this lead, Susan Wagner will be leading this conversation.
I will.
Okay.
So welcome, Laura. Are you
Get Laura up.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's great to be with you.
Thank you. So clearly you don't probably have the same list problems because you are starting with a fresh base of people, which is just amazing. But before we get there, because you did clerk for one of our favorite justices ever, tell us your favorite Ruth Bader Ginsburg story.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you. First of all, thank you to all of you at Network Nova for inviting us, and for the Markers group for having us. And this is the beginning of the presentation today was flooding memories into my brain, and what my clerkship with Justice Ginsburg and experience with her really was foundational in my decision to start the Civic Center. And for those of you who don't know, our mission is to bring voter registration to every high school in America and work on getting the 16 and 17-year-olds pre-registered. And we're nonpartisan, so everybody knows. So it was. I'm just going to free form a little bit.
For it.
So it was after the 2016 election, and my kids were teenagers, and like everybody, there was a lot of surprise and concern about what was happening with our country, including the federal courts and challenges to the independence of the federal courts. And if you all remember Jeff Sessions on TV, this was in April of 2017, saying he can't imagine how some judge sitting on an island in the Pacific could, enjoin the Muslim ban, which is wrapping up so many, racist themes and attacks on the independence of federal courts in ways we just hadn't seen before. And, something in me just like flipped really at that moment. And I have been involved in a lot of different pro bono efforts, throughout my career. But, I remembered, of course, that Justice Ginsburg had been the author of Shelby County, which was in 2013. Dramatically, she wrote the dissent, of course, but this case was dramatically undermining the Federal Voting Rights Act, which is a core piece of civil rights litigation decision in our country. And that, it hasn't stopped. She wrote a decision in 2020 during the Wisconsin primary. This is shortly before she passed. And the question was about modifying the timing of, I'm blanking right now on whether it was like returning absentee ballots or, the voting timing because of COVID. And the court said, the lower courts had said, yes, there had to be some modification of the timing. And the Supreme Court said, no, essentially, too bad, so sad. And, she wrote in her dissent again that this was, essentially a matter of life and death and health of the country. And that she used this word, it was a matter of utmost importance, and the court, that's what Supreme Court justice, they can alert us, but it is up to everybody to get involved and not have so many critical decisions be in the courts. If there's a robust democracy and everybody's voting and people are turning out and getting registered, we don't have to have as many very significant matters handled by the court. So I just will tell you one more thing, and then I do want to talk about the Civic Center. But one more thing that actually is when after I told the justice that I had started this organization and that we were working on getting young people registered to vote in high school, she sent me the text of a speech she had given in Stockholm, and she was quoting the author Amos Oz in this speech, and he had a piece called something something like what to do with it. What about a fanatic? How to handle a fanatic? And the idea is, he said, what do you do when there's a fire, terrible fire? And some people, he says, they run away, right? You see a big fire, you run away. A lot of other people, maybe they'll write a letter, they write an angry letter, not just like a letter to a voter, but an angry letter saying like, somebody's got to do something about this. And the other people are like, let's get a teaspoon to put out the fire. And if we all get a teaspoon, we actually can put the fire, out potentially. So anyway, I just wanted to give you all that, that reflection on the justice. But
right. And I
yeah,
think,
if
everybody with the teaspoon works together, then they're going to continue to work together because they form other relationships. So certainly another one of her brilliances, and Amos's is as well. So you have cap, gown, and ballot season now, which is just brilliant. Great name. And I think everybody here would love to hear how you got started, what you're actually doing, and how we can help.
That would be great. So, right, we got started because of really seeing this need and opportunity in high schools that actually maybe I'll do this through some slides if I can, because there's many people.
Robin has the slides.
Yeah, many people, when I tell them that we work on high school voter registration, they go through a series of reactions about whether or not that is going to work and why it may or may not. And the first reaction I hear often is, there's no reason to help high school students register to vote because they're not old enough. They can't register until they're 18, is what people think. So that's not accurate. In every state across the country, almost everybody is old enough to register to vote before they graduate from high school. And so this map is showing 50% of teens live in these sort of periwinkle states that you can pre-register when you're 16. 20% more live in states that have at least a year to register before you turn 18. And then again, like Texas is one of these green states. And Texas, you cannot register until you are 17 years and 10 months. But even there, almost everybody is old enough to register in high school. I want to show the next slide, because the next thing that people assume is that it won't make any difference because they believe young people don't turn out even if they're registered. But that's not true either. Every presidential election from 2004 to 2020, more than 75% of registered youth turned out. And this slide is showing a bar chart we've prepared showing exactly this point. So the biggest problem is not turnout once young people are registered. It really is registration. And if you can show the next slide, I'll just show what that looks like year in and year out in terms of this registration gap. So the next slide is showing a chart of 18 and 19-year-old registrations, which basically run from under 40% in midterm elections to in the 40s and low 50s in presidential years. And then there's just a huge gap between that and older adults, 45 and above, or just all adults, where the registration rates are more like 70% or close to 80%. So it's that enormous opportunity that is being, and you can stop sharing now, but it's that enormous opportunity that's being sacrificed because of the lack of high school programs. And 40% of teens do not go on to college. So if we're not getting them in high schools, there's really no way they're dispersed, and there's no efficient way to find them, as opposed to being in an educational setting where you're with your peers. The other thing that last slide showed in terms of the gap is that many people assume that interventions like automatic voter registration or online voter registration are just doing enough to solve the problem. And what I just like to tell people, in the 2022 midterms, only 30% of 18-year-olds were registered. And there's 4 million who turn 18 every year. So our country was leaving 70% of new potential voters completely behind in this process. And anyway, so that's the real opportunity. And we wouldn't have 30% registration for 18-year-olds if all of these other interventions or opportunities were working. So our programs, just to get to Cap, Gannon, Ballot and how we address this. So we do provide a lot of data, and there's a lot of data reporting on our blog, which people can look at. We help just start with what we have. All of these places, there's an opportunity for students to be running voter registration drives and for educators to help support them. So we run training programs for educators to help them understand this challenge and opportunity and how they can help their students do this for themselves, because students have we all know this, have a high level of need for authenticity and for their own voices to come through in this. So it's really about giving them the agency and helping them see how they can run a nonpartisan registration drive in their own high schools. And so those programs have been tested, and they've been shown in one test, we were able to show a 6.3 percentage point boost in registration for 18-year-olds, and compared to places that didn't have this program. And another test that we did in New Hampshire, 7.4 percentage points. And that's just a huge, most voting programs are not able to come close to that because we're taking this novel approach. Cap, Gown, and Ballot is just the idea that that graduation season should be voter registration season. And we have all kinds of materials on our website that anybody, all of you here, can use to reach out to people, your schools, the schools in your neighborhood, the school you went to as a kid, your kids' schools, to say, incorporate voter registration as part of graduation.
I love it. I love it, Laura. Brill, thank you so much. And any other follow-up I'm thinking is, like, as Susan Wagner said, is how we can just look at the toolbox, get engaged, bring this into the school system. And I think a lot of people in the room were looking for stuff to do. This is really perfect. And it's definitely specific, which people like as well. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Can I just say one thing? We have an event in DC.
Oh, that's right. The May 7th event. Let's talk about that. Yes.
May 8th in Chevy Chase, Maryland, May 7th in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and then an online Zoom for just further information about our program on April 30th. So I hope you all will sign up. I'll put them all in the chat if they're not already.
Well, I love it because, like, as Susan Labandibar points out, is that if you don't capture people, they're not in the voter file. So once we get these kids in there, they can also be contacted later on, and then they're at least
absolutely
that step is done. So thank you so much.
I also hear you saying that it's every 4 years that you really have the biggest opportunity because of a presidential election, and that's the shiny object. So if you're ever going to participate in this is the time to do it. I want to ask you one question, because some of the people on here are members of unions. Have you found cooperation from teachers' unions across the country?
Yeah, we would love to work with teachers' unions, and it's been we don't have an existing relationship there. So if people want to make introductions, one of the great ways to help us is to introduce us to great partners, because we can make a presentation to teachers unions. We have done various work with school district. So please
Terrific.
introduce us.
Terrific.
Yeah.
So if anybody's on that has a connection,
Yeah.
let's
Yep,
connect for
that's it. Let's get it started. I love it. High school voter registration. Thank you, Laura Brill from the Civic Center. And we need volunteers to fuel this kind of stuff. I want to bring up Deb Taylor from Red to Blue and talking about really the need of, we have all this stuff going on, and your organization just is really badass around that, bringing the volunteers to do the work. Let's talk about Red to Blue. Give us the skinny on it, the 411. What does your group do? And let's talk about the impact you're having now.
Hey, thanks for inviting me to speak today. Appreciate it.
Good to see you.
Well, we first ventured into voter registration in 2022 with the New Pennsylvania Project, and they were a very new group as well. They were just getting started, and they registered 20,000 people that year, and we contacted about 8,000 of those people and made about 10,000 calls. We acted as their back office. They did the on-the-ground registration, and we called the people a month later and asked them if they had received their voter registration card in the mail. And if they hadn't, we worked with them as to how to find out if they had successfully registered, and if they hadn't, we helped them successfully register. And then we also made a GOTV call to them right before the election. I will say that things have changed a lot since 2022 and the way we do things. It was a lot of work in 2022 because it was all done by hand. We had a data team that received the scanned forms of the voter registration paper copies and entered all the information onto spreadsheets. And then the spreadsheets were rearranged by our spreadsheet guru, who then made them into organized them by county, and then made them into doable lists by the caller. And each week we assigned a list to all the callers that were available that week. And 3 of us managed them by answering any questions. And we were available from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m., which were the calling hours. We made sure that someone was available during all those hours to answer questions. We also followed the spreadsheets closely and nudged when needed. And it was a lot of work.
I was going to say, just listening to you, Debra, it's amazing. And just the amount of work, and that's what I think that's so important about what you bring to the table, and what a lot of times when we do look at the kind of work that needs to be done, a group like yours, and I think the story was that you guys were postcarders, a lot of you, and you were also trying to look for other things to do. Is this correct? Do you have a little bit of your Genesis story? Where I love this idea where we just don't have to do, there's postcarding and then getting into something like this back office work that's so important when you're doing something that needs so much data input, correct?
It does. Actually, our postcarding team is a different team. We had phone banking team, and until 2022, we were calling for campaigns, but found that to be very frustrating and not as rewarding for our volunteers. I would say that in 2022, everyone had a wonderful, positive experience. Our volunteers and the leadership team. It was just a very different phone call from calling for a campaign. And we really felt as though we made a difference. The people were happy to hear from us because we were helping them out. And we had some fabulous stories. For instance, I had a 52-year-old woman who had never voted before because she was illiterate. And I spent the afternoon working it out for her so that she knew what to do. It even involved talking to the ACLU, who told me exactly what to do. And she was just so happy to be able to cast her vote.
Yeah, I love it. And it is true when we make these calls that really are about voting. And even when I go to the door, when I canvass, I definitely open up with talking about a precinct to be helpful, and it's more engaging that way. And so I love that your volunteers, just the idea that it's such more happy work, even though, like you said, that's a long day to find volunteers to man for that. So that's amazing. And I know Red to Blue, when we first heard about you, and I know early on that we had built a relationship, I think through the postcard team, but we also know that you also helped Rural Ground Game, Lindley Thorne. Do you want to talk about what you did for the Rural Ground Game?
I'd like to, but first I'd like to tell you what we're doing this year with
Yeah,
the
sure.
phone calls. The phone calls are very different this year because we have an auto dialer called Scale to Win, thanks to Rural Ground Game, and we are going to do a whole lot more calling. Uh, the New Pennsylvania Project plans to register 60,000 voters this year, which we'll do the first contact with 30,000 of them. And for the GOTV call, probably all 60,000. We're also going to be calling for the New Pennsylvania, for the Project 26 PA, which is college students on campuses registering college students. And they plan to register at least 12,000. And we're also helping Vote Pro out with some of their calls.
I love that.
And
Yeah.
so we're able to exponentially increase the number of people we contact. I do also want to add that we left voicemail messages for those that we couldn't contact in 2022 and sent everyone a text. And the text after the call really made a difference because there were people who don't answer their phones. They get a text saying, we're the people who registered you, and many of them called right back.
Wow. Well, I think what I love about the program is the touches, and that I think it reminds us that when people talk about voter registration, like it's transactional, you just have somebody do it. But what you guys have really got a great system where you tell them it will be coming in the mail, then you check with them later, and then you keep making those touches back. And do you also work with people that are on the doors that will be also canvassing through, or is there any relationship with actually in-person knocking that you guys work on as well?
That's done by the New Pennsylvania Project and the Project 26 PA.
Love it.
We're just the back office.
Yeah, well, right. And so, but Pennsylvania seems to me have their act together, you know? So I love that. I think every state should incorporate this model. That's amazing. Do you work with Turn PA Blue as well?
We do work with Turn PA Blue, but not on the voter registration.
Not on the voter reg. Okay, great.
We work with them with candidate recruitment.
Well, thank you. We need to wrap up so we can get to Andrea Miller. Is there any other takeaways for what you're doing, or even for this year, that you'd like to
I
make?
just want to shout out to the Rural Ground Game for thank you so much for providing Scale to Win for us. They're not only sharing their license with us, but they also are paying all the expenses for our use of the auto dialer.
Well, I know that when we worked with them, they couldn't say enough about Red to Blue for the kind of research that you did, finding committee people in the areas that would be running for candidates, running for office, for committees. And I think this kind of work is amazing, how you were able to help them. And they were just thrilled with the amount of the outcome with that, how much you did find for them that were actually viable candidates.
The feeling is mutual.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Debra. It's a really pleasure, Debra Taylor, to talk to you. Red to Blue, make sure you check out their website and become a volunteer. I'm sure you would love more people calling, and I'm sure there's an opportunity for people to get into action with you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Andrea Miller, Center for Common Ground. Let's talk about registering people of color to vote and the new voter engagement tool, Act to Vote. And I know that you have family there, maybe dogs barking, packing your bags, going on vacation. Thank you for some space today. So let's just get with it. And you listening to everything you've heard today, I feel like you just have a long relationship with registering voters and understanding turning out voters more than anybody I know. So let's get at it.
Hey, Catherine, so delightful to see you. Laura, you and I are going to talk because our Richmond Democracy Center has an entire high school where we will be running their voter registration program. So we are very, very, very excited about that. Now, one of the things that we specialize in is not so much the registering of voters, but now trying to keep our registered voters of color on the rolls. As we all know, there are bad actors going around, and what they're doing is they're going after people's voter registration. And That is one of the reasons why we are absolutely so totally in love with a program called Active Vote. Because when you first sign up, it goes and it checks your voter registration status. If at any point in time your voter registration status changes you, Active Vote will hunt you down. It
Wow.
will let you know, whoa, you are no longer vote ready. You've got to do something, and it will literally be screaming at you. One of the things that we find, because again, we work with Black voters, some years Hispanic voters, AA and HBI voters, is voters tell us that they don't really know who to vote for, especially now in Virginia, where our races are starting to have a lot of candidates. It wasn't that long ago where, in many instances, we would get real excited when we had one Democratic candidate,
Right.
and now. And so we really worry that people will go, oh, this is confusing. Active Vote is like, I've got you. So every race that is on your ballot, every candidate that's running, there's a photograph, there's the candidate's website and all their social media. So you don't even have to try to find them. They found them for you. And you can answer questions about, what do you think? One of the things is, as a Black woman, I have participated. I'm 70 years old. I have been invited to participate in 2 polls in my entire lifetime. Active Vote is loaded with polling opportunity, and you end up building your political matrix. What do you believe? Are you left? Are you center? Are you right? Where are you? And as you establish what's important and what you believe, when you look at a candidate, it says, all right, now your beliefs are here, and the candidate you're looking at, they're over here. We're not seeing any alignment. I mean, maybe you want to vote for them, but you're here and they're there. I'm not seeing it. And that's very, very interesting for people because it gives them that ability to compare. This is what I believe, and this is what the people that I'm thinking about voting for believe. Are
Yes.
we believing the same thing?
Well, it's funny. While we're talking, I pulled up on my phone. I've ActiVote. I downloaded it, and I'm going to say to everybody in the room, if you download this on your phone, I was so impressed with it because it's so engaging. You open it up, and there's a civics lesson, there's trivia, and then I went to my primary. It just definitely it shows you everything.
Yes.
Who's on the ballot, Republican, Democrat. I find this to be the wave of the future for civic engagement. It's just not like
Yes.
vote. This is really
Yes.
engaging. So I recommend this. And how are you finding new voters that are downloading it, and what feedback are you getting from people?
All right, now here's the biggie. So the upper left-hand corner, and notice it's screaming, I am vote ready. If they held the election tomorrow, I am ready to go vote in it. People have all these questions about absentee or vote by mail.
Right.
When you click on absentee voting for your state, it gives you, here's the mail ballot request deadline, in person, online. Then it gives you, here are the deadlines to submit it. And then it gives you all your state specific links, including, after you've sent in your ballot, now this is where you can go and you can track your ballot. It's all in one place. And you're not going, ooh, where did I put that email? Or where did I write that note that a really nice person on the phone explained to me? It's
Right.
right there on your computer screen or on your phone. Now, I Oh, go ahead. I mean,
I was just going to say, I love it. I love it. And
You-
so, yeah, so we're getting up to 1 o'clock. I want to make sure that there any other information when we talk about, right now, when you hear this conversation about the importance of really engaging voters, this is one tool. Is there anything else that you're working on that you'd like people to know about?
well,
For Common Ground.
all right, I'm going to drop another link in the chat for our Virginia voters. We have rebuilt our early voting list where it goes county by county, every early voting location in the county, and the dates and times that they are open. If you go to the state website, it looks like there are 12 early voting locations. They make such a mess of it.
Yeah, and we have our
just find your county, and here's everything you need to know: phone numbers, dates, times. We got you.
It's so funny. It seems like voting is it shouldn't be so complicated, right? But every state is different, and we talk about this. So I want to let people know that you're part of the Women's Summit team, that you're partnering with us, and that part of that we're hoping for, because you're also National Women's Political Caucus. We're talking about candidates that are running and doing some training with candidates at the Women's Summit. But also afterwards, we're going to also hopefully be able to do some special trainings with you around around this app, about getting people then out there, making sure voters understand what's going on in this election. So
Yes, it's getting more and more and more complicated. And we always worry about older voters,
yes,
low income voters, voters with less education getting left behind. And so we try to build tools that will help everybody catch up and stay up to date.
yeah,
So
I know,
we
especially
love our
getting
voters.
folks to the polls, people driving people to the polls. This is still, we have tools and tactics, but it is relationships. And when you're in your community, this is where it's important that groups are on the ground. So thank you, Andrea Miller, for being here. Again, I want to thank all our guests, Susan Labandibar and Andy Liebman of Swing Blue Alliance, Laura Brill, CEO and founder of the Civic Center, that Cap and Ground program, and she has her events coming up May 7th and May 8th, and the May 8th one is in Virginia. They will be in the chat. And Debra Taylor, Red to Blue. What a great conversation with Debra today. It really shows you how important that back office work is, that labor of love, and the joy that she found in really helping people. That keeps people really doing this very important work. These are experts, folks. We are experts in the grassroots, and we're bringing it. And lastly, Andrea Miller, founding board member, Center for Common Ground, and also she's the president of the National Women's Political Caucus. If you don't know about that, you should, and you should join us. So I want to make sure that we get to the other side, and Susan Wagner will join us on the other side. We'll do a wrap up, but we're going to wrap up the show right now. No one is coming to save us. It's up to us. Make sure you get your ticket for the Women's Summit, June 28th and 29th. Let's roll credits. See you next week.